My name is Lloyd Burlingame. I'm a retired set and costume and lighting designer. I worked on Broadway for many years. I did 44 shows, and I have just written several books. The book under question today is one called A Blessing Well Disguised, A Blinded Artist's Inner Journey Out of the Dark. This program is Dave's Gone By with Dave Lefkowitz on UNC Radio.
Welcome back to Dave's Gone By on this Saturday morning. If you've listened to the show since the very beginning, you know that along with the music and the humor and the other things that we do, we care very much about culture and the arts and theater, especially. And I've been a Broadway person for 2.5 decades now, writing about it. This goes mostly a bit before my time, but it's kind of fun to talk to designers and the people who create for Broadway. And we have on the phone with us someone who designed 44 Broadway shows. It could be either lighting, occasionally costumes, sometimes set design, from the 60s all through the early 1970s, a bit before I actually started going to Broadway. But he's a part of the history of the Broadway theater, and you could have seen his work in such shows as Alfie and the original Boeing, Inadmissible Evidence, the John Osborne play, Marat Sade, the original Philadelphia Here I Come, Joe Egg, all the way up through a show that I've got to ask about called Via Galactica back in 1972. And then he stopped doing that, not really by choice. Our guest in the neighborhood, Lloyd Burlingame, came down with an illness that rendered him sightless. And since then, he's been writing books and doing other things, and writing books about navigating New York, being blind with seeing eye dogs. So he's got this fascinating two-part career that we really want to ask Lloyd Burlingame about. So first of all, welcome, Mr. Burlingame, to the neighborhood.
Thank you very much, Dave. It's good to be here.
Well, really, really good, and proud to have you here. So let's roll back to the beginning. How did you know way back when that you wanted to design for theater?
Oh, that started when I was very young. I was taken by my dad to see a production of Gilbert and Sullivan's operetta, The Mikado, when I was 5.
Uh-huh.
And I thought the show was pretty good, but I loved the scenery, and I thought, what a great idea. And I went home and I asked my mom if I could please have one of her shoeboxes. I wanted to make a set of my own. And thereafter, there wasn't a shoebox that was safe in Northern Virginia, and I did my first set in summer stock when I was 12.
Wow. What show?
It was called The Apple of His Eye. And as I recall, it was a set that was very, very mustard yellow. I don't think that colored since.
I hope not. Yeah, well, okay.
Young man's mistake. And then I went on to Carnegie Tech, which was called those days. Carnegie Institute of Technology had a wonderful theater school and still does. It's called the Carnegie Mellon University. Basically went on, did my time in the Army, and I came to Broadway and to New York, did the classic sort of off-Broadway, and then went on to Broadway. I lucked out. My first off-Broadway show was a musical by Jerome Kern, who, of course, everybody knows Kern's beautiful songs, and it's a lovely show called Leave It to Jane, which is based on a play by George Ade called The College Widow. And I designed it when I was still in the Army. It was kind of a wild thing.
No, wait. How did you manage to... Well, you were stationed, you told me before we started talking on the air, in Long Island, right?
I was stationed in Queens, Long Island, yeah, just across the river. And, somehow I managed to... I think I was not exactly the world's best soldier for a while there. I was, as they say, bugging out quite a bit to get back into the city, into what they call Manhattan, and then to work with a friend of mine on building the set, painting the set. We got it done, and the show turned out to be really delightful musical, and it had an interesting chorus. It had Lainey Kazan was in it, Patricia Brooks, who went on to be a very famous opera singer here, and George Siegel, the actor who played the banjo in the play. So it was a chorus you couldn't afford to get together much later than when we did it.
But if that was the chorus, who was in the show? Who were the leads?
There was a wonderful comedian named Dorothy Greener who had a large part. The Jane and her, the tenor, were not so well known.
Oh, okay.
But it was a very talented group of people, and the show got wonderful reviews, and it ran for 2.5 years, and I thought, geez, what's so hard about all this?
Yeah, but as a designer, your job kind of stopped by first preview, so you must have gone on to other...
By opening night, lot of work to do if you're also designing the lighting. And
Ooh, true.
So the previews work really well for designers too.
That's right. I forgot about that. But that show's running, so I guess you're getting a salary while the show's going.
I got a royalty, which was interesting. I had a Fulbright scholarship, which I'd applied for, and I have a great love of opera designing for opera, and I wanted to go to Italy to observe and to maybe participate in designing for opera. So I had a scholarship to La Scala in Milan, Italy,
And you went? You did?
I did, yeah, I did, and it was. I thought I was totally on top of the world at that point. I thought, my gosh, I've got a hit show in New York, and I'm getting a royalty, and I'm living, on this wonderful scholarship in Italy, and.
Did you ever get to see Franco Corelli live? I'm just wondering.
Oh yes, I certainly did. Yes, I certainly did. I first saw him in Bologna in 1959 as Calaf in Turandot. He was wonderful, and this was some years not some years. It was 2 or 3 years before he came to the Met, so he was wonderful.
Just curious, because he was one of the greats of all time. One of the people I wish I'd seen way back when. And again, that would have been a little before my time of even knowing what the hell opera was. But do you have any La Scala memories of funny things that happened, or anecdotes, or anything?
Not so much about La Scala. Of course, the work there was wonderful, and the cast in those days, where Callas wasn't there at that point. I think she was having one of her problems with the director of the opera house, Dr. Girghelli, but there were other wonderful people. Wonderful people were singing there, and the standards were very high. And I learned a lot from being there and observing. And of course, just being around, touring Italy, and fleshing out my sense of architecture and painting and what have you. It was a wonderful gift of the arrangement of Senator Fulbright, who made it possible for many of us to travel abroad. But I was very glad to get home because I wanted to get back to work. And I did. I did a bunch of off-Broadway shows. One that I liked a lot was called Moon in a Rainbow Shawl.
Moon in a Rainbow Shawl?
Mm-hmm. It was produced by the famous Carmen Bloomgarden, who produced The Music Man and The Crucible and Death of a Salesman. And it was his first and I think only off-Broadway show, but it was James Earl Jones's first show in New York of any consequence, and also Cicely Tyson. So it was,
good Lord!
It was a fabulous cast, and the show got wonderful reviews, and it was very helpful. It was my favorite off-Broadway show.
Could you tell when both of them stepped on stage that they were going to be famous and special and all that sort of thing?
No, but you could sure tell that they were terrific actors.
Sure, okay. Well, I assume as soon as James Earl Jones opened his mouth, you'd go like, oh boy.
And especially in a 200-seat theater. I mean, whoa.
So you're still working off-Broadway at this point? Off-Broadway?
Well, he was just getting started.
Well, no, you I meant. You...
Well, yes, I was at a kind of intermediate stage. I was assisting a very famous designer, and I was also doing my own little shows off-Broadway, and I was beginning to do my first Broadway shows. I did my first Broadway show. It actually never made it to Broadway. It did all the out-of-town stuff. It was scheduled for Broadway. It was by Lionel Bart, who wrote...
Oliver, wow.
And it was called Lock Up Your Daughters. It had been a big hit in London.
Yeah.
This was in 1960, the spring of 1960, and it went out of town. We went to Classic New Haven opening and the Classic Boston opening, and people thought it was I think people thought it was too racy for its time. Well, of course, it could play on Sesame Street today,
Well, yeah. Well, although you wouldn't play it on the Bill Cosby Show, that's for sure. But, just teasing. Okay, but Lloyd Burlingame, we're at 1960 now, and there's the Lionel Bart show you were going to design, it closed down.
No, I did design it. I did the scenery and the lighting. It was out of town.
Oh, okay, yeah.
My thing, and it was directed by Alfred Drake, and it was, Michael King was in it, and Nancy Dussault was in it, and some other really terrific people, and it just wasn't good enough for Broadway. But anyway, not everybody does his first Broadway musical when he's 25, so I lucked out. So I kind of got an early start on all of this stuff.
But a year later, you helped design, or you were still assistant to design a classic, which was Carnival. Was that your first?
I spent a lot of time on Carnival. Yeah. I was the scenic and lighting assistant, and I drafted the whole thing. I took it out of town, and I was in on every meeting that designer Will Armstrong had with Gower Champion, who was the director. And it was a wonderful experience for a young designer, a young person in the theater, to see how Gower Champion worked. He was the perfect director. He was just a total collaborator and wonderful, wonderful guy. And I I learned so much from working on that show, and it was a wonderful experience.
I don't know why they haven't revived it on Broadway. They've done it off Broadway. I think the York has done it, and yet they haven't. It's never been brought back. I just don't get it.
Been brought back, yeah. That's true. They did it on the. I can't remember the name of that. They do semi-stage productions at the city.
The York musicals in Lefty. Yeah, they've done that. And
of course it has a beautiful score, and it's a terrific show. But I learned a lot from it, and the guy I was working for, Will Armstrong, he became a great favorite of David Merrick, the great producer David Merrick, who produced 80 shows on Broadway.
Yeah, right. Well, do you have any? Well, first of all, do you have any Bob Merrill stories? Because obviously the end of his life was not as good as sort of the beginning and middle. Did you have any sense that he would be?
I do remember one thing. One song wasn't working, and there was kind of some scratching of heads about what to do with that song. And we were at the National Theater in Washington, and there was a kind of upstairs, there was a kind of in back of the mezzanine, there was a kind of a big open space, and it had a piano, and I had to go up there for some reason or other, and I was walking by, and there was Bob Merrill at the piano, and instead of reworking the song, he just wrote a new one. But I thought that's one of the interesting things about going out of town, because then Phil Lang was there, he could orchestrate it, and Saul Schechter was the conductor, and he could, of course the cast were Jerry Orbach and Anna Marie Alberghetti were total pros. So, but it was a very interesting, instructive use of going out of town, and also that that Merrill was such a facile,
he could just churn it out. He's like, oh, not working. Okay, I'm not going to labor over it. Let me just write another one.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, seriously. What about David Merrick stories?
Now we come to I worked on 3 major productions for him as an assistant, and then I designed 13 of my own shows for Merrick.
Whoa!
And so I really lucked out in that situation. So,
but were you protected from him, or did you have to deal with him directly?
Oh no, we had to deal with him very directly. He was a fantastic guy. He was.
Whoa.
He was. I thought the world of him. He was a tough cookie. I mean, he was very demanding, but he really loved the theater, and he would never mess with the show. Once he approved the director and the casting and the design and what have you, then he didn't come around and micromanage. But when he came to a dress rehearsal, it was he either did thumbs up or thumbs down, and then when it was thumbs down, that meant we all had to roll up our sleeves and really get to work. And
well, that's fair. That's reasonable.
Well, it was wonderful. It's a wonderful way to treat collaborating artists. And on my first show, Philadelphia, Here I Come, everything went just as smooth as silk. It was wonderful.
That's a beautiful play.
Beautiful play. Yeah, I'm glad you like it. I think it's...
I mean, unfortunately, I did not see the original production back on Broadway, but I saw it at Irish Rep a few years ago, and they brought it to they did a Broadway production, a revival of that a few years back. It's just a marvelous Brian Friel drama, if people want to get a chance to read it.
Friel was a wonderful guy and a fabulous playwright. And the second play, that was the perfect experience in the theater with Merrick and Friel and everybody. And then the second play was Friel's second play for New York, which had not been tried out in Europe, in Ireland, and it was called The Loves of Cass McGuire, that starred Ruth Gordon.
Ruth Gordon?
Yes.
Wow.
And she was Miss Cass. It was not a part for her, and thereby we all had our difficulties, and Mr. Merrick let it be known that he was extremely upset with things needed to be fixed. So we all did our very best, but I thought he was so displeased with my work, which I thought was pretty good, actually.
Oh, okay. So what literally did he tell you about your staging?
He said to change this and change that, and this and do that, and which is usually that doesn't happen that way. And I thought, okie dokie, you're the boss, you're paying for this, I respect you. And but I thought I'd never work for him again. And so when we opened in New York, and we were sort of standing backstage, and I said, well, thank you very much. I appreciate your hiring me, and I really think a lot of you and all this stuff. And I sort of saying goodbye to him, and he said, I don't know why you're talking like this. He said, you're going to do such and such a show next year. And I said, oh, really? So
well, good for you. Listen.
After that,
yeah,
I did 11 more shows for him. So he was loyal, and if if he thought you were good and you delivered the goods, and he stuck with you if you stuck with him, and I certainly did. I was lucky.
Yeah.
This is to say that I had a lot of luck early on, and so that when the time came that the black day, the evil day came when I was, I was in my early, I was just turned 30 when I did Philadelphia, Here I Come, and I'd done I'd done 3, 4, 5 Broadway shows before Philadelphia, but that was the start of my real career.
Sure.
And then I got to, I guess I was 45 and then I took over the design department at New York University.
Oh my gosh, my alma mater.
Really? Did you go to NYU?
I went to NYU Tisch School of the Arts when I was going there. It's now Canbar, but I was doing film and TV there. Yeah.
I found it. Basically, it was the design department was a wreck when I took it over in 1971, and I was the chairman of the design department for 26 years.
Oh my God! All right, now, before we even get to the sort of the down sad period that we need to talk about, what is it? You're hired to run the design department. What does that mean? They give you a budget. What did you physically have to do, like, for the first 3 to 5 years in your term there?
First, I had to design a curricula.
Yeah.
Second, I had to basically hire the faculty, and then third, I just had to do all the things that you have to do to get it underway, get it launched. And there was a great deal of dissatisfaction with the previous faculty members, many of whom were very good. It was just was a very unfortunate situation. And I had no idea. If I'd known what a mess it was, I don't think I'd gone anywhere near it. But I actually took it because I had become very interested in the work of Swiss analyst Carl Jung, and I wanted to pay for a Jungian analyst. So I thought I better take a teaching job. So I took a teaching job, and then 26 years later, we all ended up very happy, but it was wonderful, and I was able to hire some absolutely fantastic people, and it was
anybody we would have heard of, any of the faculty.
Well, the faculty that I'm not designers are not household names, but Oliver Smith was a very famous designer. He designed, My Fair Lady and the music and West Side Story and big movies, Oklahoma. Guys and Dolls, and he was the co-producer of Ballet Theater, so he was the kind of 800-pound gorilla that I was able to lure to the department, and so he did very well, and now my students are getting Oscars and Tonys and what have you, and but I wanted to do this actually job because it was a clean slate. I didn't have to. They had been talked to me about running a department in another major university, Eastern University, and I didn't see how I could make it. It didn't seem right to me. It seemed too ivory tower, and I thought, New York is not all that. There's unions to deal with, and there's all this sort of, but there's also the excitement of New York and the potentials of New York, and I thought this would be very exciting to run a department in New York, and it was, and so I had all working professionals, and my point of view was. Not to turn out clones of a famous designer like some schools, but to have a group of designers sometimes who had very opposite points of view, so that the students would always be required to find themselves and not just slavishly sort of try to please one teacher. So I always had at least 2 teachers in each area who had different points of view, and it worked for most students. Some students it was a little bit too strong for, but. The department is now very strong. It's considered one of the best departments in the country, and even after 4 years of my leadership, I was.
Hey, actually, can I ask you where physically you designed for? Were the shows going into Circle in the Square?
No, they went. We had at 111 Second Avenue. We had a major theater upstairs on the 5th floor. Then we had a smaller theater. But the size of a regular off-Broadway theater downstairs on the 3rd floor. And then when we moved to the 721 building on Broadway, then we had theaters all over the place. We had mostly small theaters.
Yeah, I remember 721 Broadway. I took film classes there. And I just don't recall.
But the big productions were done at 111 Second Avenue still.
So, and now we're talking about what time period? From 1970...
I said 71 just to 97, I ran the department.
71 to 97?
Yeah.
That long? I guess we've gotten to the Black Day here with Lloyd Burlingame. Something happened to you that normally happens to people when they're 7 or 12 years old, apparently. That's usually the range when this disease hits, according to Wiki. You know,
it's called juvenile juvenile macular degeneration,
right?
And you know, the macula is a little tiny spot in the center of your retina that does all the fine tuning that allows you to read and to see colors, and it's the sharp focus that your eye has. So when that goes, an awful lot goes with your vision, and mine came upon me when I was 45. So I guess I was a late bloomer in terms of. But my sister has the same thing, and she did. It was discovered in her earlier, but it was quite a shock to go into the ophthalmologist thinking that you were going to get a pair of stronger glasses, and then he says, "Well, you're now legally blind," and you say, "Legally blind," and of course the only word you can hear is blind. And I said, "Well, what does that mean?" And I said, "Do I have to prepare for the worst?" And he said, "Yes." And I thought, my God, I'm leaving here a working designer on Broadway, running a major school, and I'm going to go blind. I thought, wow. So that was the big challenge of my life, was to sort of say, well, where do we go from here, or do we go from here? You know,
Well, a couple of quick questions before we chart further progress of your actual life and career. If you had been diagnosed with that at that stage, let's say now, instead of 1970, whatever, would it be correctable? Would it be changeable? Or things haven't changed? You just get it?
No, there's nothing to be done about it. It's one of those situations that basically what they're doing now is they're working on a technique that that basically there's going to be your wear device, maybe like glasses or so, but basically what it is a radio receiver, and it receives light rays, and it goes, and it just basically goes is being designed to go directly to the brain, so that it bypasses the retinas. And it's in an experimental stage, and it's wonderful that it's happening, but
So can I ask also, when you first went and were diagnosed like this, you were still a working person. You just were seeing things fuzzy. It got worse. Do you see? And I'm sorry to ask such direct questions, but do you just see black? Do you see nothing? Do you see fuzz? Do you see?
People say, I'm about 95% totally blind, and I have a very tiny, small amount of far peripheral vision, and it allows me to see. What I see is the world kind of like if you know the paintings of Monet with his little dabs of color, little bits and pieces of, it's like a Monet out of focus. And it's like if you've ever driven in a fog, it's sort of like driving in a fog. Sometimes you can get a little something, sometimes you can't. It's a very precarious kind of amount of.
So even the little speck that you see is also out of focus. It's not like there's a dot of clarity. Like to go into a field, you could see a tree very far away, but that's
It depends. If it's a black tree on a snowfield, I see it pretty. And well, they used to say the last definition I used to go for year after year to get my fields checked, and they got worse and worse and worse, and I never could define fields exactly, but it really means how much you can see and how well you can see. And so finally I went to the doctor, this is about 20 years ago now, and I said, what are my fields now? And he says, you don't have any fields. I said, oh. And he said, and then so when I went abroad in '93, I had another Fulbright, and I went abroad, and so I went back to my doctor because I had to have some stuff for the scholarship, and he said, well, you can count fingers at 2 feet, and but now I can't count fingers at all. So but I was lucked out. This is the important thing.
Yeah, sure.
Stand here. I was from about 45 to 60, 45 to early 50s, it was a nuisance. Then when you get into the 50s, it suddenly became a big problem. And then when I got into my early 60s, I really needed to go and get my guide dogs. And And I retired from the university when I was 62 and a half. So.
Oh, okay. Actually, the story's a little different than I expected it to be. I thought it almost was this very sudden thing, that course of a couple of months.
No, I lucked out. You see, I just went down a dimmer very slowly. I couldn't have kept. I did my job at NYU 18 years legally blind. I couldn't have done it without. I adapted. I learned Braille. I learned the first generation of the talking computers. All the stuff, the adaptive software devices, computers that I spent.
And when you were at NYU, you basically stopped designing outside of there. Your Broadway.
Yeah, and I had to. After a while, after 10 years, I had to stop teaching design itself.
Well, sure. But I'm surprised that even the first decade at NYU, then you weren't still in the field. Was that frowned upon, or you just didn't have the time?
Oh no, I was still in the field. I was very busy, and I did some of my best work. I did great big operas and stuff at that time. And the thing you referred to earlier, this big Broadway musical, Via Galactica. It was a space age musical. I did the lighting for that. It was huge.
Well, that was 72. That was
72. Well, I kept that was the end of the Broadway stuff.
Okay.
Yeah, I did. I did a couple of other things on Broadway after that. But I was mostly in the 70s. I was designing operas in Cincinnati and Boston and San Francisco, and so I think that's out of my all of that. That is not a very complete resume of mine.
Well, yeah, that's why if you get a chance to contact the Internet Broadway database, which is run by...
I have, yeah, that's accurate. That's for the most part, it's accurate, and I was surprised it had my assisting stuff in there too.
Yeah. No, but they stopped you.
But the back of my book, of my theater book, which is called Sets, Lights, and Lunacy: Stage Designer's Adventures on Broadway and on it's a complete, a totally complete list of everything, all the shows I've ever done. So.
Well, can I ask you though, like you mentioned the lunacy part. What's a lunacy story that happened to you designing for Broadway?
Oh dear, where to start?
Okay.
Well, let's see. On Broadway, the lunacy stories.
And they can be something that you're involved in or you just witnessed because you're, all the casts or, the actors are doing stuff.
Trying to make a career in the New York theater is lunacy in itself. I'm trying to think of some stories that might be interesting. I remember working, did a play called Marat Saad, directed by Peter Brook, and it starred Glenda Jackson was one of the leading players, and it takes place in a madhouse, which you probably know, and she they all have a particular disease, and hers was something with narc in it.
Narcolepsy?
Narcolepsy, yes. Yeah. It's a sleeping disorder. And so she has a speech, and she climbs it's on a very steeply raked, slanted stage, and which goes, from low in the front, where the audience is, up to high in the back, and then she climbed a very rickety ladder, which was very unstable on this stage, and these were sort of inmates of this institution presenting a story about the Marquis de Sade, who was the director, so to speak, of this drama about the assassination of Jean-Paul Marat. And so she goes up, this person who's with a sleeping disorder, and she gets to the top of the ladder, and she gives this long, long speech, and at the end of the speech, she falls forward off the ladder, which is maybe at least 8, maybe even 10 feet tall. It was a tall ladder.
Yeah.
And she falls forward, and the guys in front of her catch her. I mean, she was fantastic. I mean, I thought, my God, she's a great actress, but boy, is she fearless. So I had to focus a light on her, and and it wasn't working very well. So I thought, well, I better get up on the ladder myself, because I was designing the lighting, and I thought, one fine day with all the stagehands watching me, I climbed this ladder, and I thought, oh my God, the whole world is watching me, and I can't tell them how terrified I am of heights. I thought, oh dear God, just get me through this thing. Don't let me fall on my face and kill myself, and also make an idiot of myself in front of all the stagehands. And somehow I managed to get it all done, and when I got down, the guys applauded.
Oh, okay. I was expecting some terrible event or
Oh no, it had the potential.
Potential there.
Terrible.
Well, there was a story, since you're an opera person, there's a story in that collection of, I think Victor Borga edited it, of opera disasters and opera crazy things, and there was a diva, I'm sure you've heard it, and I don't know, it probably wasn't Tosca or something, but one of those big major operas, maybe it was a Wagnerian thing, and all the stagehands hated her, and then she was a real pain in the butt to work with. So there's this one, her last big thing in the show is that she sings the aria, and then she jumps off the parapet, and then she's supposed to land on this mattress, several feet down, out of the view of the audience. And apparently, at the final show, they replaced the mattress with a trampoline. So,
not a great idea. So she bounces back.
She bounces back up. She's screaming. She's laughing. She's upside down. She's just bouncing and bouncing. The audience is going berserk.
Yeah, that's Tosca, right?
Love that story. I don't know if it's even apocryphal, but I hope it's true. Yeah. But what's another loony sort of thing? And this could also be...
Well, I was in the theater when you were talking about the musical Carnival, which is, if your listeners, it takes place in a small-time circus in Europe, and Anna Maria Alberghetti was playing Lily. It's a story of the movie Lily, with the waif who comes to the circus, so we were. This is when we were trying out at the National Theater in Washington, and so there was just the designer himself, Will Armstrong, and myself at the lighting board. We have a lighting sort of set up in the middle of the auditorium to set the cues, and then the orchestrator Phil Lang was down in the orchestra pit, and Richie, I can't think of Richie's last name. It's Scottish, but anyway, he was the sound guy, and Miss Alberghetti, and this was the first time they'd ever used mics, on body mics on performers. Why they ever did it on Alberghetti, because she had a big voice, but anyway, they did. Mm-hmm. And so Gower had said, well, it's just the usual thing, when Anna Maria, he said, when you go off stage, be sure to turn the mic off, and so we're sitting there enjoying it. So she excused herself. She went off stage, but then the whole auditorium was filled with the sound of feet going down a corridor, clack, 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 and a door opening, and then another door opening, and all of a sudden we're realizing Anna Maria has forgotten to take off her mic, and so she goes to the bathroom.
Oh God!
And then there's this great Niagara rush. She says the toilet has flushed, and we're all like, whoa. I mean, we're just doubled over with laughter. So bad. And Gower looks at us and wags his finger, don't you dare let her know. And so she came back on stage all ready to resume rehearsal, and everybody just kept a straight face.
Well, it was a good thing all you heard was the flush and that sort of the in-between. That would have been the worst. That would have been, oh, God.
Oh, I don't recall. The thing I recall is the flush. It would sound like you're going under Niagara Falls. It's very dramatic.
Oh, that's excellent.
So that's part of the lunacy.
Do you have any lunacy stories from your design and teaching in NYU days?
Well, yes, I do. There was when I first, the first NYU story, the first year, the first couple of months of actual teaching, we were at a former plumbing warehouse that the university had rented. The design classes weren't taught at 111 2nd Avenue. They were taught right around the corner at 214 East 6th Street. And this is an old plumbing warehouse, and it was pretty ramshackle place, but this is very funky time. We were right down the street was the Fillmore East, and all that sort of heavy metal rock and roll stuff was going on at that time, and so in this place there was a back open large room that had 5 small skylights, and I thought, oh, that'd be a good place to teach painting and drawing. So I had a table set up there, and then the great Oliver Smith was. I thought, oh my goodness, how is it going to go with this very super famous guy? And he's going to put up with the students, and he's going to pay attention to me, and he's going to be a pain in the neck. I don't know what's going to happen here. So anyway, so we get launched, and so I'm back at my own studio working away, and I get a call from Oliver Smith, who was a very courtly sort of guy, and he said, Lloyd, you've got to come over here. I've just something I have to show you, and I have something I need to talk to you about. He was very nice, but I thought, I better get over there. So I ran over there. It was raining, and I got over there, And I got to the back space, and I could hear this odd sort of sound, clink, 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 sort of odd sounds. And I thought, what's going on here? And I open the door, and all the tables are rearranged. They're all kind of higgledy-piggledy, and there is standing the great Oliver Smith holding an umbrella over himself and a student he's working with the painting. And I thought, oh my God, it's raining through the skylights.
Oh.
And the great Oliver Smith did not throw a temperamental hizzy fit. He just couldn't have been more of a pro. Got his umbrella, moved the class around so that they were away from the thing. And I thought, and he said to me, and he had sort of sounded like Jack Benny. He said, Lloyd, he said, I'm perfectly happy to do this today, but I hope you'll get the NYU roofers in here and we'll get these things, the skylights caulked. And I thought, absolutely, of course. But I learned that Oliver Smith turned out to be an absolute prince and one of the great mainstays of our life, and one of the joys of my being able to be the chairman to get one of the 2 or 3 great American designers ever to teach for 23 years at the school.
Wow.
In fact, our students, I just had a group of about a dozen of his alumni. Every year, on his birthday, which is the 13th of February, we get together, which was the day before yesterday, and we get together and we remember him. So he had a huge effect on all of us, and I miss him very much.
We are talking, by the way, to Lloyd Burlingame. He, as we've been hearing, he was running the NYU Design Department. He also did 44 shows in some capacity on Broadway, but all of that slowly had to basically come to an end as you lost your vision, and then you got to the point where you had to retire from NYU. You had to go and do other things and get guide dogs, and you've written about that in a couple of your books, including your most recent.
No, it was my first book, actually. My dog book, which was called Two Seeing Eye Dogs Take Manhattan, a Love Story. Mm-hmm. And it was, the thing that happened that was sort of bad was when I retired from NYU, because I really had to retire because my vision was getting to the point where I had to basically fire myself. I just couldn't do my job properly. But I left the university. I was given the university's Distinguished Teaching Medal, and we all parted very good friends.
Good.
And still are. So I thought, now at last I can stop trying to fake that my sight is so limited, and I can just use a white cane. And so I got a white cane, and I thought, oh, this is going to be great. And so I worked with it, and it went okay for a while. And then one day I went to near St. Vincent's Hospital. I don't think your readers necessarily know. Anyway, very complicated intersection where there's a T. It's a mess. The intersection's a mess, and so you have to be very careful, even when you've got 20/20 vision. So I was there with my white cane. I was listening very carefully to the traffic, and there was a bunch of workmen behind me. And they were working on the hospital, and so it was lunchtime, and the guy so I was kind of hesitant about moving. And so this hard hat guy behind me, who sounded kind of like Archie Bunker, he said, "Hey, blind man," he said, "it's okay. You can cross now." And I said, "Really? It's okay?" He says, "Yeah, you're good to go." And so I put my cane out, and I stepped out into the traffic, and suddenly a taxi came roaring right at me and hit my cane, and a man grabbed me and pulled me back, and the hard hat was actually sending me out into traffic. And I said, what was that guy doing? And the man said, he was playing a very cruel joke on you. And I said, wow. So I went home and I thought, this is not too good. This is really bad stuff. The white cane is not the answer to my prayers. And then so a friend of mine said, let's go and check out guide dogs. And I checked out guide dogs, and that totally changed my life, because a guide dog would never let that happen. And I thought,
and also you said to the guide dog, sick him and tear the throat out of the hard hat.
Well, somebody said, why didn't you call the police? I said, I was so bummed out. I just couldn't believe anybody would be so inhuman as to do that.
Did you hear laughter?
Oh yeah, they thought it was hilarious.
Wow. Okay.
And so the getting the guide dog was that was a pretty black day. So, but the day I got my first guide dog, and I didn't know, I didn't have a clue if it would work. I didn't know anything about it. And I got out third time I said, well, what the heck? Let's really go for it. And so we went flying around that oval, and I thought, my life went from black and white to Technicolor. I mean, it was just fabulous, and I thought, this is really great stuff. So I thought that was a direct opposite of
that day.
The creep sending me out into the traffic. So, and it's been wonderful. So I'm now just starting my relationship with my third dog, and he's fabulous too. And the dogs worked for about 8 years, and so I've got my first dog, and I was 63.
Do you live with the dogs 24/7? They're your dog.
Yeah. Oh yeah. He's right here. Al, my new dog, named Al, who's a really great-looking black lab. He's right here at my feet.
It's always Labradors, isn't it? What is it about labs?
Oh no, labs are pretty popular now. They're accepted by the public, as friendly dogs, whereas shepherds can sometimes, who are wonderful, at guiding too. I mean, the shepherds are the classic guide dogs. But I think people get a little bit afraid of them as police dogs.
Oh, yeah.
But I don't know. Anyway, for me, the labs have been wonderful. Yeah, my first 2 dogs were yellow labs, and now I have a black lab, and that's quite different. And it's great.
No,
but this has been the great adventure of my life. The theater was fantastic and all, but and my boyhood dream was realized. But this thing of partnering with a dog is just it's a miracle.
Well, what are some other anecdotes of having the guide dogs? Funny or just really cool? Or
one of the things about them is people tend to want to be helpful. When I had the cane, you felt like I felt like I had leprosy, and people didn't know what to do with me, and I felt handicapped. And with a dog, I don't feel at all handicapped. I feel fine. Tony Walton, who's a famous designer, who's a very dear friend of mine, he said that the two of us are a 6-legged creature with 2 eyes. Anyway, well, here's a little story. I mean, I call it, my first dog's name was Hickory, and I call it the Hickory Connection. I was in Washington, D.C., and I wanted to go to a concert, and so I had Hickory was with me, and I was staying with my brother, and so we went down to the Kennedy Center, and it was kind of late. It was middle of the afternoon. It was ridiculously late to get tickets for this concert, so we thought, what the heck, we'll give it a try. And so we went there, and we waited in line. This woman was saying, we're totally sold out. No, totally sold out. No standing room. Forget it. So I get up to the window, and I think, well, she's going to hit me, And I'm going to, do you have 2 tickets for this evening's performance? She says, no, we're totally... And then she looks at the dog, and she said, what a beautiful dog. What a great dog. And all of a sudden I hear her at her computer going clickety, clickety, click. And she said, I have 2 tickets for you in the front of a box, and I think there'll be plenty of room for the dog. And would that be okay with you? That's what I call the Hickory Connection.
Yeah.
The most wonderful things happen to you because of the dog. And there's lots of that. That's why my book is filled with stories about the dogs and all the great that they do for us. And
well, you have a new book coming out. What is that about?
Well, that book is about.
What's it called, first of all? What's it?
The name of that book is A Blessing Well Disguised.
A Blessing Well Disguised.
I'm getting my book title special. A Blessing Well Disguised: A Blinded Artist's Inner Journey Out of the Dark.
Now wait a minute. You just got a copy of the book to tell me the title or the subtitle of it. How do you? Is it in Braille? How are you able to check?
I work with an editor, but I basically I'm able to write. I hear when I'm typing. I hear what I'm typing. I have the screen. The software basically reads whatever's on the screen. So you just type and whatever. So I live with email and all of that. So I send my manuscripts to the editor, and then we either do by telephone or we do by correction and stuff. And that's how I get it done. It's a little cumbersome, and it takes a little bit longer, but I'm able to do it. And I wanted to get those. I wanted to do the 3 books. I wanted to do my theater book. I wanted to do my dog book, and I wanted to do my inner journey book.
And the inner journey book, the new one, that is what, a Jungian thing, or what is it?
It has a lot to do with Young is important because I was able still, when I started into Jung, the analysis, I was still able to paint the dream images that come, and with Jung, dream images are really important. So that's a lot of that. So I have a lot of those the paintings of the dream images there that I could still do. It's for about almost 10 years I could still get recognizable stuff done, and so it's how I basically kind of found my inner center and how life, which just looked like it was completely over the day the doctor said I was going to go blind, turned into these last years of my life, my sunset years here. I'm now 80 years old. I'm almost totally blind, and it's by far the best time of my life.
Good Lord.
And so you have to say to yourself, go figure,
Well, it sounds like you have a lot of friends and acquaintances and stuff. So how much of your life can you actually live do all the things you need to do just for yourself, and how much do you still have to rely not just on the dogs, but on other people to help you out?
I would say I can do about 75% of what needs to be done for myself. What I really need help with is financial stuff. Reading the bills and making sure all that sort of the boring stuff, and the medical stuff, making sure the pills are right and all that sort of stuff. So it's basically the stuff that I can cook for myself. I figured out a way to shop for myself. Everybody in this neighborhood knows me, and I've set up my life so that I live down by Washington Square. I live not far from the School of the Arts. I live just a little bit. I live on 9th Street between Broadway and University Place. So it's it's about a 10-minute walk to the 721 building. And then I still have a very great relationship with the school itself, and my former administrative assistant is a close friend, and I have a wonderful life.
It sounds. What about?
So my book is meant to be an encouragement to people who get a big whack, because losing your sight when you're an artist is a big deal.
Yeah, of all people for this to happen to, a musician could go blind and still make music, obviously, but for a designer of light and occasionally costumes and of sets that was your whole existence in a way.
That's right, and that's what I taught too.
Yeah, so for that to be taken away and still to find joys in different aspects of your life, and
my books have had some success. So I guess so that's been an extremely interesting transition. So I offer it up as a kind of I don't know what, not an example, but sort of I have we couldn't figure out the cover. We had the darndest time. I was working with a former student, and darndest time about what it's about. And there's a favorite poem of mine from childhood. It's by William Cullen Bryant. It's called "To a Waterfowl," and the last lines of that poem are, "He who from zone to zone guides through the boundless sky thy certain flight, and the long way that I must tread alone will guide my steps aright." And I thought, I was a kid when I read that, and I thought, that's a great poem. And I thought about that. I thought, I want to quote that poem somewhere in the book. And I thought, this is about a compass. I said, it's the bird has this inner compass, and we all have our inner compass. And the thing is, if you can grab your inner compass and stick with it, you're good. And I said, and this is my story about how I found my inner compass. So,
congratulations.
That's what that book is about.
On that, certainly, and also for your longevity and for the stuff that you've done and continue to do. People can get, by the way, Lloyd Burlingame's book in all the usual places. You can find it on Amazon. And do you have a website?
Yes. Just check the website. Or just go to Amazon and use my name.
Lloyd Burlingame, Burlingame. Check out his 3 books. Right, there's 3 of them that are available, and. I didn't want to let you go before asking 1 or 2 more quick questions about the encounters that you've had over the years, especially in those early heady Broadway days. You had a thing with Richard Nixon?
Oh, that was so funny. That was I this is the sublime and the ridiculous. I had just opened a play on Broadway called The Day and the Death of Joe Egg that starred Albert Finney. It was a wonderful, beautiful play. And then I had to somehow get myself to New Hampshire, where a friend of mine who was a designer for ABC said, please go up there. The Republican National Committee is doing commercials with this guy Nixon, who's going to run again for president. And I said, oh my God! And so I really needed the money, and so I somehow I got myself to New Hampshire, and these guys in navy blue Dunhill suits, and white shirts and maroon ties. They all came with the suits, I guess we call them today, and they said, well, we want one set up near a big fireplace, and we want a great big spinning wheel by it. And I thought, I get the fireplace, but I don't get the spinning wheel. What's with Richard Nixon and the spinning wheel? So I said, okay, fine. So I had a bunch of locations to find, and so I found a big fireplace, and then I went out and I got I found an antique shop. I found a spinning wheel. They said, no, it has to be a really big spinning wheel. I said, oh, these guys are weird. I thought, okay, I got a bigger spinning wheel. And then then the great day came when the man himself, when Nixon was going to come, and I think everybody well, I don't know that your audience today will know this, but Richard Nixon, president, who became president, had a very heavy beard, and he was always, no matter how, he had to shave twice a day because he would be caricatured all the time with this sort of very heavy 5 o'clock shadow.
Right. Yeah.
So, but in those days, this is in '64, I guess. Where are we? No, it's 68. That's the election year. So Nixon shows up, and everybody's kind of nervous, and the lights had to be very bright in those days to do for television and for filming, very, very bright. So everybody wore makeup. So out comes Nixon in a navy blue suit, a white shirt, and a maroon tie, except his face was orange. And he had these sort of chipmunk-like cheeks. They puffed out, kind of. And he looked for all the world like an orange-faced chipmunk in a navy blue suit.
Well, wait a minute, but the commercials were black and white at that point, so maybe...
Oh, no, he was shooting. They were shooting. This was a color.
Oh, it's color. Oh, okay.
We were shooting in color by then.
Oh, wow. Okay.
But I just remember just said, like, toad glass, With all the Watergate and everything that happened subsequently, and the his resigning and everything, whenever his name came up, I always thought, what's the orange chipmunk done now?
But
that's part of the lunacy.
And actually, you're sort of to blame. I mean, I guess that commercial, he did.
Yes. And I did 1 year. I did a bunch of commercials for all sorts of people that I didn't do cigarette commercials, but I was working for various companies, oil companies and fabric making companies and things that all did very politically incorrect things. So I think, oh dear, I didn't mean to. But I didn't do that consciously.
Well, no, you think it conscious. Sometimes you do things for money. That's just.
I did a lot of my opera stuff. Didn't pay very well, so I did what I call Robin Hood designing. I would work for I did a bunch of shows for the Ford Motor Company. I said, well, Ford Motor Company paid for my Mozart operas, so that was good.
That's fair. And last question for Lloyd Burlingame before we let you go: did you work on a play with, or you knew Thornton Wilder?
Oh, I did. I didn't know him, but I spent a whole day with Wilder. This is a horrible situation. This is the show that Merrick was going to it looked like Merrick was going to fire me from. It was The Loves of Cass McGuire. We were at the Colonial Theater.
Well, there was the Brian Friel play, not
the Brian Friel play.
Yeah, okay.
So it looked like Boris Aronson, who was a very, very famous and well-established designer, was going to be brought up to probably replace me, and that Thornton Wilder had been brought in to see if he would rewrite or give advice to Brian Friel in the play. Mm-hmm. And so the theater, Mr. Wilder, who of course wrote Our Town and The Bridge of St. Louis Ray, and he's one of my super favorite American writers ever. Mm-hmm. I'm a great fan, super fan of Thornton Wilder's, and the setup was at the theater. The inner lobby of the theater had these doors that had had these windows in them so that you could look into the theater to see the show, to check on it every once in a while if you wanted to see a specific scene or whatever. But Mr. Wilder and I had seen it many, many times, and all I was doing was checking the lighting cues, so I would just peek through the window to see that the lighting cues were all right. And meanwhile, I kept Mr. Wilder company. And he had a need to be not too far from a men's room, so so he and I would pace back and forth, and so I spent the entire matinee and the entire evening performance going back and forth in that lobby with Thornton Wilder, and I thought, well, I didn't get fired from that play, and I think I'd mentioned about that Merrick did keep me on, but I think of that play as the day I spent with Thornton Wilder. So.
Well, do you remember anything he said or anything you?
No, the important thing was he didn't talk about the theater. We didn't talk about art. We didn't. I can't remember it all. It was just perfectly normal. We talked about stuff of interest, but.
But nothing. I meant just him having to use the men's room every half hour or something, or
something like that.
What do you have, Mexican food that day, or?
I don't mean to be unkind, but I thought the world of him, and I was happy to be in his company.
Well, we've been very, very happy to be in the company of Lloyd Burlingame. Do visit his website, lloydburlingame.com, to order his books, read the 3 books that he's written. They're also on Amazon. And we just, we thank you so much for your time and your spirit and the fun that you brought and the history that you brought to the neighborhood today. And we certainly wish you good health and more writing and more good things and success ahead.
Thank you, Dave. It was a great pleasure being with you.